Just a quick video covering Ashes. It's not going to be really discussing any of the stuff that all the other content creators are discussing, which is pretty much just overview of the information that we have on the reasoning of why they're shutting down, things like that, theories, all this kind of stuff. My video is going to be a little bit different. My video is going to be a little bit educational to give people some clarity on the position that we're in when it comes to the MMORPG genre and how a lot of it has become this really weird financial thing, and where we started and what it has turned into when it comes to the production time, the money invested, things like that. And you can even compare like currency value from the 90s into the 2000s and things like that, and you can come up with your own estimations. I actually didn't put the time in to do any of that, but the funding discrepancy is so vast. The time frame windows are so vastly different than modern MMORPG projects now, and it's so vastly different that they're not really able to be compared to one another. And it's where you see the development decline over the years, and it starts to make sense of why we're even in this place to begin with, because there's something else that some of us don't know that's going on in the back end behind the scenes that maybe we don't really have truly figured out right now on why this is happening. But I wanted to give some examples because this is important, and this will give you context on when you should stop even worrying about certain projects once they reach a certain time frame. And it's still a really long time that you can be like, okay, maybe they'll make it. But basically what I'm trying to show is that once something gets in that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 year development time frame, geez, guys, you all right? You're playing too rough. It's red flag. I'm out. I'm out because I know what we've gotten in the past. Guys, I'm trying to make a video. Y'all gonna play right now? You pick right now to play? Really? Huh? What you doing, girl? What you doing, girl? You gonna poke into the camera? There she is. There she is. Hi. Sweet girl. I know. She's a sweet girl. Loki's gonna get you. You got screen time. Loki didn't get any screen time. But check this out, guys. Of course, these are probably estimations. We don't really truly know how many extra months or something that they went through before or after, whatever. But Dark Age of Camelot, lightning in a bottle. One of the GOATs, one of the best games of all time when it comes to the PvP aspect of MMORPGs. It is absolutely not even negotiable. And can you believe it? 18 months! 18 months! And there were a lot of PvE aspects and things like that Dark Age of Camelot was lacking, absolutely. Server infrastructure functionality and things were an absolute hot mess on release. They had huge issues, obviously, like most games. But let's look at that development time, and let's look at that budget, boys and girls. All right? All right? Great example. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years, inexcusable, fraudulent activity is going on. All right? Then we got EverQuest, the greatest of all time, the foundational reason, besides Ultima Online and on-paper MUDs, that we even have the MMORPG genre to look forward to and experience and play. We owe it to Ultima Online and EverQuest and all the old school guys, even Mark Jacobs, that created the on-paper MUDs for us to even experience these games. Thank God for them. But we're talking a pretty, EverQuest was a huge project. 3 to 4 years to develop. You'd probably have to do a little bit more research on budget. I'm not 100% on that one. Ultima Online's before EverQuest. We're talking 2.5 years, and some of the systems and intricacies of Ultima Online would blow your mind. So You're starting to see what I'm showing the middle and newer generations that didn't grow up with these MMORPGs in a box at the store that you had to go and scoop. All right, are you seeing the difference on production time frame, budgets, and things like that? This is really important. This is extremely important. You start to ask yourself, what happened? What happened? How could these massive projects somehow, you got these studios and they're taking on bigger projects? Is the project bigger? Is it really bigger? I want to add, these guys all created their own engines from the ground up. Their own engines. They're not using Unity. They're not using Unreal. They're not piggybacking their entire project off an already created environment for them to just start tossing crap in. So, keep that in mind as well. This is not that they didn't open up an engine and just get to work. These guys had to create the housing for these MMOs for the project to even begin. And, of course, these engines might have also come from previous game. These are also big studios that could have possibly been working on different projects at that time as well. So, these are extremely important details. All right, really, really hold on to this tight. And then it starts to get weird. So you look at Elder Scrolls Online, which was an absolute failure a year after launch. They really got their stuff together a few years in. It became a wonderful and an amazing MMORPG. Elder Scrolls Online is my third most invested time in an MMO that I've ever put. It turned into a great game, and it held on for a while, and it is now unfortunately fallen apart again. But let's look. That's a long time. You start to wonder, yes, they were probably juggling projects and they had their teams and studios split. It's very understandable. But it's starting to creep into the 7-year marker. And you go, man, that's one hell of a difference. If you did some deep diving and some digging in the budget, I would imagine it was absolutely gargantuan in comparison, especially. All right, so that's, we're getting those red flags on these new MMOs coming out, and we'll do some research on EverQuest 2, or if you guys want to do some on your end. But the first Guild Wars, all right, we're getting in the future, and now we're looking at a 5-6 year project. Man, these are starting to get elongated. What's going on? World of Warcraft, obviously one of the GOATs. They put out the best MMORPG on the market in the world, and it was the 4 to 5 years. All right, so you can see this gradual increase. They were the last ones really to really do it with the time frame and the budget and stuff. And this is a split studio, right? These guys are working on other projects. They've got other stuff on their plate. They have members assigned to different tasks and stuff. They're super split. So yeah, 40 to 80 people. And then you go to New World. Huge issues at launch. Big time issues at launch. A mess. And they're in that 5 to 6 year red flag area, and I think Star Wars of the Old Republic might be the only one that has this really weird production time frame and the really high budget, but it's a beloved game. All right, they got it. But yeah, it just starts to, EverQuest 2 was very innovative. Okay, so let's make some comparisons on EverQuest 2. It was not received well with the EverQuest 1 community because of how different it was from the original. But I want to remind you that the EverQuest 2 engine had some of the most enhanced and just basically their plan was we want this game's graphics to be relevant 8 years down the road. They went way overboard. Their engine was way demanding, and so you could call this an extremely ambitious project for its time era and time frame. So still 3 to 4 years. Okay, that's in the acceptable range. Basically, this video is just to show you, if you're interested in these types of things, do some research on previous MMORPG successful projects, and then compare it to Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, Monsters and Memories, Ashes of Creation. You know, all these I can't even remember that. You know, Camelot Unchained. I can't even remember some of the other ones that totally shut the doors and just stopped their whole entire process. This is the stuff that no other content creators talk about. These are the things that are just forgotten, and we feel as if MMORPGs are really hard, and it's okay if they take 7 through 15 years to make with a $200 to $500 million budget. Bullshit. Unacceptable, inexcusable. No more excuses are given to these teams. You guys have got to stop. I stopped 10 freaking years ago. I already knew what the deal was, and this isn't a "I told you so" or "I know better than you" statement at all. This is why I'm making this video. I want to see if I can get some people on my level of thinking when it comes to these new MMORPG projects and how full of crap they are. So, yep, that's all I really wanted to cover. 20 plus years later, we still have the old MMORPGs, community servers, and sometimes even the live teams keeping these games up and running, and they're, beloved MMORPGs that everybody loves, and they are still successful to this day, and these guys can't even get their games out of the gate. Once you get to that 7 through 15, as soon as it hits 7, I'm writing it off. I'm sorry. 7 years, man, 5 and 6 is still just feeling weird. So yeah, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm done. Something is terribly wrong internally with the project. That's just how I feel. History repeats itself, and you can also utilize history to have as a tool, as a comparison, to know what the hell is going on with all these new projects. Anyway, much love, guys. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Everybody else is covering one topic. I'm covering this little isolated topic. Some people might find it interesting and also dig a little bit deeper, but I wanted to just open the door for you guys to look into all of this, and it will save you a lot of anguish, headache, and disappointment, because I feel nothing with Ashes of Creation's failure because I never invested in the first place. And sometimes it just has to be that way. Sometimes you have to play hardball for these studios, these companies, and stuff like that to take the community seriously. And it's either a boycott type stuff that happens that then ruins the MMORPG genre's future. Who knows? Who knows at this point? But it's not looking good with the way that we're handling it as a community now. I think that these guys get way too much support, and I understand it. I understand the absolute desperation that we feel because we want a new MMORPG. I relate. I understand. I feel where everybody's coming from. But look into this. All right, much love, guys. Show the channel some love if you can, and I'll see you next time.